So I had actually planned on covering Richard Dawkins' concept of memetics, or memetics. People don't understand this. A lot of people throw the term meme around now. Richard Dawkins was really the first one to coin the term meme in his, I think it's his first book, The Selfish Gene. And honestly, what's funny is, when I was in my early teenage years, I was an early adopter of aggressive, I wouldn't say atheism, because I've never really been an atheist. I've always been a pantheist. But I did call myself an atheist for a long time. Even when I was a Satanist, I called myself an atheist just because it was easier to say I'm an atheist and get away with it than I'm a Satanist. It's much more publicly, like, for example, when I went into the Coast Guard, I used the term, like, for my religion, I said I was an atheist, not a Satanist, for obvious reasons. But later I had adopted pantheism because it's a more accurate way to determine my outlook on the cosmology of the world. Now, Richard Dawkins, a lot of people don't remember this. It's funny because Richard Dawkins is a brilliant scientist. He's a very brilliant person. But really, he's essentially just a professional turd anymore. Like, he really is just like a turd. I've tried to get into arguments with him on social media for promoting liberal degeneracy, which he did not used to promote. Richard Dawkins used to accept eugenics and things like that nature, or things of that nature, but now he's basically just a liberal turd. And I don't dig that too much. Although I do want to buy his children's book, The Magic of Reality, which I think probably is a decent book. But what people need to understand is Richard Dawkins' really only true contribution to science, which is soft science, and you know my opinions on soft science. Soft sciences do not exist. You either have science or you have nonsense. And it's nonsense. It's philosophy. And it's the concept of memetics, which is a sociological concept, or maybe even one could say a cultural anthropological concept, but it is not, it's not in the realm of biology. But what he did is he used a meme as an idea. Now, all these people throwing around these terms, meme, spicy meme, not spicy meme, left can't meme, right can't meme. Well, the concept of a meme is an idea. It could be a song, it could be a religion. Richard Dawkins uses the term religion. And these are aggressively weeded out through Darwinian natural selection. Religions that serve a purpose obviously survive. Memes that serve a purpose in society obviously survive because they are naturally selected for by humanity, by the thought stream. The collective consciousness of humanity selects these things. But it is actually rather funny. Like the selfish gene, there's a lot of evidence to disprove the concepts of the selfish gene. I'll leave links in the description to show disproval, the disproving of the selfish gene. Some of them are the fact that genes work in clusters, not individuals. Another thing that's important to understand: a lot of the book, The Selfish Gene, is a very good examination of the behavior of animals, with cheating, and it's a very, very good examination of animal behaviorism, or ethology in a lot of ways, and how animals interact and things like that. But it is really crappy science. It's terrible science. It's not provable. It's fun to think about. And 15-year-old James, when I was 15, I really dug it. I thought it was great. I also read the book Living with Our Genes by Dean Hammer, the guy that allegedly discovered the gay gene. Well, the gay gene's been thrown out the window. Okay, it's not real. So there's a lot of things that have been disproven, that people like me that were aggressive adopters of a lot of these social applications of science in the early 90s and the mid 90s and the early 2000s, we shouldn't have been such early adopters of these concepts because they were disproven. Now, I'm not going to say I'm not a social Darwinist or anything like that, but I believe social Darwinism can have a heart too. I've much more so softened my outlook. Plus, there's better technologies now and things like that. So it's difficult to understand now. Darwinism, actual natural selection and origin of species, and there's nothing but proof to prove this more and more and more and more and more and more and more. So that aspect is more so proven. But the concepts outlined in the selfish gene, which are experimental biology or theoretical biology, it's not really provable. But memetics explains how something like the Yoruba religion lives alive and well in Latin America as Santeria, because it fits a niche, it fits a purpose. Now, of course, other sociological people have thought of this. Even in his book, Scott Cunningham, who is a popular author in Wicca, explained this in his book, I think it's an Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs, about how people needed these beliefs in magic to sustain themselves, to keep themselves sane, things like that nature. And that is why magic has survived. Whether magic is real or not, I happen to think it is real. But a lot of these concepts have survived because they serve a purpose. For example, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, the major religions, they exist because they help society move forward. They help keep society in an ebb and flow that moves it forward and keeps it healthy. Okay? Are we outgrowing traditional religion? I think so. And I think that's where the concepts of things like cosmotheism, beyondism, creativity, I think these things come in handy now that we are surpassing these outmoded concepts of religion. Now, somebody had asked me in the comments section of my last video, what's my view on Hinduism? Well, what is my view on Hinduism? That depends on what we mean by Hinduism. Hinduism can mean, it can mean anything as simple as belief in the creator Brahman, the sustainer Vishnu, and the destroyer Shiva. Okay? It can mean Brahmanism, the belief and devotion to Brahman, the creator, the unknowable essence of God. Now, some people depict it as Lord Brahman, but no, Brahman is a genderless being that transcends human understanding and is what has created creation, and that's the form of Hinduism I like to think of. But Hinduism as itself can be thought of as any number of individual sects that embrace everything from Hinduism, like I've previously explained, to animism, to all sorts of stuff, and embrace practices such as cannibalism, the burning of wives when their husband dies and their wives join the husband in the afterlife, the throwing of corpses into the Ganges like animals. I mean, there is any number of things that can be considered Hinduism. And that is a problem. What is Hinduism? Well, to a student of Western philosophy or religion, Hinduism is the belief in Brahman, the creator, Vishnu, the sustainer, and Shiva, the destroyer, and the cyclical creation and destruction of the universe through these forces. Now, Brahmanism to me, which is what Hinduism truly is the belief in Brahman, the unknowable God, almost a pantheistic interpretation of God, and looking towards the sutras for things such as karma and bhakti and dharma, and how to live in a right relation to the laws of nature. As I've said, these are universal laws present in all religions, but I do think the dharmic belief systems, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, etc., I do think they have a leg up on some of the more Western Abrahamic belief systems. in my opinion, with things like karma, dharma, ahimsa. I'm a big believer in ahimsa, as people know from my veganism. So, I mean, there's a whole lot that can... What is Hinduism? What meme are we calling Hinduism at what time? I mean, to define Hinduism is even more difficult than to define Christianity, to define Judaism, to define Islam, to define other religions. It's very difficult to actually nail down what is Hinduism, which is why for the Western student of comparative religions, again, it's a belief in that cyclical creation and destruction, Brahman the creator, Vishnu the sustainer, Shiva the destroyer, again and again and again and again and again, the dance of creation and destruction. So that's what Hinduism is to the Western student of comparative religions. I do recommend people practice bhakti yoga, which I think is especially the forms of meditation defined in the Bhagavad Gita. If you're starting out with meditation, I think that is probably the simplest form of meditation to embrace. I do believe people should read the Hare Krishna version of the Bhagavad Gita, which is called the Bhagavad Gita as it is. I think it's the best translation available to Westerners, and I think it should be read. I've said in a comment section about the role that the International Society for Krishna Consciousness played in my adoption of vegetarianism, which eventually resulted in my adoption of veganism, so that I could uphold the beliefs and the practices of ahimsa, or dietary nonviolence. I think that people should broaden their understanding of things. I also encourage, if you look like me, I think you should read the works of Savitra Devi. I think you should at least check out Savitra Devi's writings. Know who Savitra Devi was. Educate yourself on who Savitra Devi is. And I believe Hinduism is a very important belief system in world history. It's not as aggressively influential as, say, Christianity or Islam, but it is important, and I think that it's worth knowing for anybody that wants to understand comparative religion or even human civilization as it is, because the Indian subcontinent has been so undervalued. And I don't like using the term Eurocentric, because I look at it this way. The reason the world history is Eurocentric is because that's who was kind of doing everything. For the most part, that's who was taking the most aggressive and active role in civilization, in the transformation of human civilization. China did a lot, but China was basically, it was within the borders of that general area. The same thing is true to a degree for the Indian subcontinent until Islamic invasion and until Islam involved itself. But even then, it was still kind of, it was not as aggressive at altering the course of world events as was Western civilization. Western civilization, the reason things are, quote, Eurocentric is because Eurocentrism is what formed the world as we know it. For better or worse, but if you really want to be objective, obviously better is what happened for the most part. I've spoken to Nigerians that have explained how colonization lifted up Nigeria. I've spoken to Indians that have admitted that colonization lifted up India. You would not have modern countries in some of these regions without Western influence. The same is true for China. The same is true, imagine China without the influence of Britain, without the influence of the United States, without the influence of the USSR, etc. Imagine North Korea without the influence of the USSR. It would not be the way that it is. It would not be what we know as it is now. Okay, and that's what people need to understand. So there's a reason that Eurocentrism is Eurocentrism. There's a reason the memes of the West last. For example, crop rotation beats praying to the vegetation gods and committing human sacrifice. So that is why Western agriculture, the Eurocentric agriculture, scientific agriculture, outperforms you know, dancing, doing rain dances, and committing human sacrifices. So Eurocentrism is a thing because Eurocentrism works. Whether you want to believe it or not, or whether you think it's wrong to believe it or not, it's the truth. But this does not mean that you should turn a blind eye, which is the thing. You never turn a blind eye to the cultures of Africa, to the cultures of Asia, to the cultures of Oceania. You never turn a blind eye to these other cultural contributors, especially because in the world we are today, almost no one is isolated. Almost nobody is isolated. So there are many cultural contributions. Hinduism has been contributing to Western civilization for many hundreds of years. It wasn't until maybe the 1890s or so that Indian missionaries had been spreading the concepts of predominantly of Bhakti yoga and Hatha yoga to the West. But these things are important things that have fundamentally altered the West. The 1960s was heavily influenced by the teachings of the East, and you had the International Society for Krishna Consciousness come here to try to save the hippies from themselves, to teach them what Hinduism really was, to save the West from its own degeneracy. And you had the hippies turn a blind eye to it. You had the hippies destroy the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in many ways. People don't even know what any of these things are because they have been so perverted by the masses. And people don't know that the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has many farming communities throughout the world. Many wonderful things to understand. And this all goes back to the meme. These ideas, these cultural ideas that help move civilization forward or backward or keep it where it is, keep it fruitful. These are things that should be understood, but I want people to remember, memetics is not true science. It's a soft science, and that is the contribution of Richard Dawkins to science. A soft scientific theory, a theory. Despite the fact that Richard Dawkins is a brilliant person, his own emotional investment in atheism, his creation of the religion of atheism, retarded his ability to actually play an influential role in biology, which is his chosen science. And to me, that's sad, because I think Richard Dawkins is a very brilliant person, but I don't think he's contributed anything more than being a turd to science. And that's all for this video. Check the links in the description.